This all changed quite rapidly in the 4th century with the rise of Constantine to power, ushering in our second period, one that I'll refer to as the institutionalization of the church. This very well may be the most significant event in church history, irreparably changing the place of the church in the world, meaning that the way of worship had to change significantly. It didn't take long for popes to be seen as holding an office akin to emperors and kings, wielding temporal authority over its land. The church in the West, seeing itself as the first among these great cities, tried to assert itself into the spiritual matters of the East, claiming authority over all of Christendom. By the year 800, it began to assert temporal authority as well. Unsurprisingly, as the church grew in worldly power, so too did the clericalism and abuse within it. Greater emphasis was placed on the clerical state, making clearer distinctions between clergy and lay. Simony flourished in this time, allowing local secular leaders to appoint worldly and untrained men to church positions, treating holy orders as mere political positions. For many, this was one of the most hopeful periods in church history. Unfortunately, not everything was reformed in this period. The papacy was divided at times, warring over lands and authority, and those becoming unhappy with the abuses of the church were growing in number. By the 15th and 16th centuries, we see a church, on the one hand, intellectually and culturally seeking higher than it ever had before, while on the other hand, fraught with scandal and poor catechesis at the lowest levels. Indulgences were sold, heresies preached, abuses plagued the liturgy, and revelry and superstition pervaded the culture. The reformers like John Calvin and Ulrich Zwingli appeared with their own complaints, and soon enough, the church was left scrambling to keep everything together. One of the issues that allowed these reforms to flourish was the fact that the Catholic Church had never officially codified its doctrines or practices. Prior to this, the church was led largely by convention, that we'd always done something a certain way, or ad hoc decrees, specific responses to specific problems. By now, it was clear that a complete declaration of faith was necessary. It was here that a new liturgy was defined, replacing all other liturgies less than 200 years old, to bring absolute uniformity to the church throughout the world. And democracy sought to upend the world previously defined by the church's authority. At times, uniformity led to rigidity, even idolatry to human laws. Certainty inhibited exploration and adaptation. Urgency fostered impatience and overlooked true conversion. In just the late 19th and early 20th centuries alone, significant early manuscripts had been rediscovered. The historical study of scripture had begun to flourish, and translations of the patristic writers were becoming widespread. The tradition, it seemed, was far more expansive and complicated than our simple formulas and uniform liturgies had led us to believe. From 1962 to 1965, the church issued constitutions calling for the complete reform of the liturgy, redefining the nature of the church. What was lost in uniformity was more than made up for in depth and enculturation. On the other hand, disunity and abuse have flourished as well. Without the strict guidelines of before, some have gone far beyond the intentions of the council, undermining tradition and teaching error. A race to the extremes has left the church struggling to maintain unity since the council, leaving some to feel as if we're on the brink of another schism. But if there is one thing we can be sure of from our study of history, it is that it won't end here. Further reforms will be necessary in the future. The reason we study history is not so that we can conform to how things were done in the past, as if there is a singular way to be church in any context.